If you're looking for the backup option in Office 365, then good luck because it doesn't exist. So do you need to bring your own backup then? Well, ask a room full of supposed experts and some will say yes, some will say no. So what's going on there? Are the pro backup team living in the past? Are they trying to flog you a service that you don't actually need? Are they on the backup team been drinking so much Microsoft Kool-Aid, but they've lost the ability to reason? Let's find out. Welcome back to the Pro Tech Show and Happy New Year. To decide if you need to backup Office 365, you need to consider what you use as backups for. I'm going to talk through 5 scenarios where traditionally you do rely on a backup, and I will tell you what Office 365 can and can't do about it, then I'll tell you what I think the answer is. And finally, I'll tell you what Microsoft said the answer is. All of that you should have all the information you need to make a good decision. If you already use Office 365, comment below the video and let me know if you back it up or not. When you get to the end, let me know if this video has confirmed or changed your opinion. Thinking about times you might rely on a backup. One of the first things to mind is recovering from a physical failure or disaster. But the good news is, you've outsourced this problem to Microsoft, worrying about infrastructure and facilities. That's their problem. They have service-level agreements, and it's up to them to make sure they meet them. So this isn't really something you need to worry too much about. Another common reason people use backups is to revert the data back to a previous point in time. That could be to undo a mistake or just to see what a document looked like before some changes happened. They're looking at Office 365 options for SharePoint, your version history. This is a lot more convenient. It's end-user accessible. With that enabled, every time you save a change to a document, it records it as a separate version. And end users can go in and browse through those versions and revert as they need to. There are some limitations. It only works for SharePoint, it only works if it's enabled for Document Library, it can only hold so many versions. And it doesn't help at all if the file has been deleted. And remember, it's end-user accessible, which means end users can just go and delete the files or the versions. That's a useful feature that lets people roll back documents to previous versions or to see what changes have occurred. But it doesn't prevent data loss, and it's not a compliance solution. Then we're gonna come back to that point later. But for now, let's move on. By the way, if you're interested in this sort of content, and don't forget to subscribe for future videos. The third scenario is recovering from accidental loss of data separately. Something has been deleted or overwritten. There are a couple of really useful inbuilt features that can help with this. Exchanges Deleted Item Retention and SharePoint Recycle Bin are both good examples. They allow our end users to go in and undo deletions from the past. Now I say the past, there is a limit, so they have to realize quickly enough. The limit varies between services, but as a guide, you can undo a deletion from a couple of weeks ago, but not back several months. And that of course assumes no one's gone in and clicked the purge button. In addition to those user-facing undo features, as an admin, you can go in and enable retention policies. These effectively prevent anyone from permanently deleting or overwriting data. Every time a change is made, it stores it as a new version. So this fills in some of the gaps he mentioned with the version history in SharePoint. Now, from an end user's point of view, it might look like they've deleted something. But really, it's still there. A compliance admin can go in and retrieve it. This is fairly effective at preventing data loss due to simple end user mistakes, but it isn't perfect. Its major weakness is that it's not storing a separate copy of the data somewhere else. As you read with the backup, the retention copy is stored right in alongside the live data. Take a mailbox, for example. If you enable retention on a mailbox, and the user tries to delete an email, all that really happens is the email gets put into hidden folder. It's still in the mailbox. So if anything happens to that mailbox, you lose live data. And you lose retention data to the classic example and what I've seen several times in administrator deleting and recreating a mailbox to try and fix an issue. Now, as a side note, that's almost never the right thing to do. But unfortunately, it's something a lot of admins jump to. Now you can enable retention for the mailboxes themselves, but that just adds an extra step for the admin to purge it. Now, you can argue that's bad administration, and I would agree with you. But let's face facts, people make mistakes. If your data recovery plan relies on people having not made mistakes, then that is a bad plan. One option that sometimes gets touted as a potential solution to this problem is preservation lock. Without enabled, even your admins can't override or change your retention policies, though that is a potentially dangerous option. Once it's enabled, you can't turn it off on have a defined period of time has elapsed. Even if you want to know, I'm not a lawyer, so don't take this as legal advice. But there are a number of data privacy laws, which might take issue with that, European GDPR being one potentially. It might not take kindly to being unable to delete certain types of data. So please use that option with caution. Certainly, I wouldn't advocate enabling that across the board. Now, I've been focusing on the actions of your admins. But this problem extends beyond your admins and beyond the admins. And if your support partners, I've seen Microsoft's own support team cause data loss. They accidentally worked out 2 weeks' worth of data. One of my customers note, to be fair to them, they put their hands up, they apologize, and they provided compensation. But they couldn't bring the data back. So retention policies, they're really useful if you want to preserve and locate data in your live system, but it's in your live system. And if you try to view it as a recovery solution, that is a major weakness. Our fourth scenario is malicious destruction of data. Now, I don't think he does spend a lot of time on this one. I've already explained a number of scenarios where you could lose data accidentally. So someone wants to destroy the data on purpose, they have options. The really scary scenario here is if one of your admin accounts was compromised, or if an admin route for that matter. That happens, there's not a lot you can do. You can enable retention policies, but then they can just turn them off and purge the data anyway. But the only thing that might help is preservation lock. But if I already told you why that one could be a bad idea. The fifth and final scenario is recovery from data corruption, or data corruption can and does happen even in Office 365. Whether that happens on Microsoft's end or somewhere in between, it doesn't really matter. The effect is the CME, the fact is that your data can be damaged or destroyed through no fault of your own. Microsoft do have protections in place to prevent catastrophic corruption from causing large-scale data loss. Your data exists in multiple replicas, and they replicate using transactions that's planned changes, rather than the underlying storage. So if the storage itself becomes corrupt, they can just flip over to a different replica. This doesn't prevent small-scale data corruption from damaging or destroying individual files, though. Retention policies won't help either. They're triggered in response to plan changes. Data corruption isn't a planned change. So there'll be no copy me as Microsoft do that. She did backups of SharePoint Online, but it's more for their purposes than yours. But if you notice a problem, and you get a ticket, and quickly enough, they can restore back within the last 14 days. But they can only restore an entire site collection, they can't restore individual files. But if you're really in a pinch, that might be useful to know. My thoughts, then: do you need to back up Office 365? Well, I can't tell you how much volume to place in your data. That's up to you. What I will say is that if you value the data you're putting in Office 365, then yes, you should back it up. If you don't, then you're accepting some level of risk that you might lose that data, less so than with an on-premises environment, granted, but there is still risk. Office 365 provides some pretty decent data retention services. These are not the same as data recovery services. All of that data is stored in the live environment. Replicas don't count either by definition. They replicate changes, good or bad. You need a separate